Go ahead.
I'm the audience.
Hello. Voting rights. Something everybody wants, but statistically, not many people actually use. Especially not those teens 16 and 17 who are legally not considered an adult. Why is that, though? In plenty of other cases, teens who aren't 18 have been considered adults in plenty of other things. Children as young as 12 can be tried as adults for serious crimes in criminal courts, and 16-year-olds can usually enter into contracts that are legally binding due to intent. As a youth who was recently 17, I can understand the helplessness and lack of care about politics when you're not viewed as sophisticated or mature enough to be able to participate. But why is that the case? This brings me to my point I'm going to be talking about today is, should the federal election have its age restrictions lowered to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote? On to my first point. Teens pay taxes. They pay income tax, sales tax, and plenty of other taxes. In fact, according to the IRS, in 2017, individuals under 18 paid $778,153 in income tax alone, which may seem minuscule in comparison to the nearly $1.6 billion of gross income tax, but in comparison to the fact that only about 35% of teens are in the workforce, when the math is done, teens pay about the same amount of income tax as any other voter in any other age group. Which begs the question, if they're paying about the same amount of money as everyone else, why do they still not have the right to vote their leaders? In fact, some cities in Massachusetts have found this injustice and decided to try and correct it. An article in The New American reads, on November 21st, 2019, the town of Brookline, Massachusetts voted in a town meeting for state approval to lower their voting age to 16. And the town voted 142 to 71 in favor of this measure. And while that's just one town, later in the article it goes on to describe other towns in Massachusetts and two municipalities that also have chosen to pursue routes to lower the voting age, including Somerville and the municipalities of Concord and Northampton. Which brings up another question. If teens are being taxed, why are they not getting representation? Because historically speaking, taxation without representation has been enough of a problem to cause an outrage and demand change, so why is this any different? Which brings me on to my next point, maturity and competence. Anytime the debate of lowering the voting age comes up, you can almost count on one thing being mentioned against it, that teens aren't considered adult enough or mature enough to be able to handle the responsibilities of voting. That isn't quite a fair assumption, though, seeing as how maturity and competence aren't a normal qualification one has to have to vote. They simply need to be above 18. But let's assume for a second that it is a requirement. As David de la Fuerza points out, we must ask ourselves, if 16 and 17-year-olds can contribute to society through work and face the criminal justice system, isn't it reasonable to allow teens the self-determination of voting? Which is a good point. If teens can work, face charges, and enter into society in many other facets, why is voting such a large leap in belief compared to those things? Which brings me on to my final point. On the topic of voting, voter turnout. The prolonged effects of teens voting has been shown to increase political turnout across age ranges. Not just for those young voters, even those 65 and up have had increased numbers at the polls in towns that have lowered their voting ages to 16. According to Keith Mandel, young people also have a strong interest in politics generally, despite the conventional wisdom they are more concerned with other things. In a survey conducted by the Washington Post on 12 to 17-year-olds, they found that 73% of those surveyed were very interested or somewhat interested in politics already, and only held back by the fact that they weren't considered an adult at the time. And this shows that teens are already interested in entering the polls. And this interest has been proven to spark discussions at home, which spark general political activism, which in turn increases voter turnout as well as the efficiency of our democracy with it. And even in recent presidential campaigns, candidates have had lowering the voting ages discussed as one of their talking points. Former presidential candidate Andrew Yang had lowering the voting age as one of his main points while running for office before he dropped out. On Yang's website, it says, localities that have lowered the voting age have seen an increase in voter turnout across all age groups. This, all together with all the other evidence, shows that lowering the voting age in general will increase voter turnout and help cut away some of that near 50% voter non-turnout that plagues America today. In summary, teens deserve the right to vote because they pay taxes into their government, they have just as much competence as any other adult voter needs, and it would in general increase voter turnout and help our democracy as a whole. So as I've shown, the restrictions should be lifted to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in federal elections. Thank you.
I'm still here.
All right, perfect.